Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday evening live stream. My name is Dana, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday evening. Starts at about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it kind of these days it kind of goes for as long as it goes. So let me just say something in the chat here to get that going. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. If you would like to be notified of when I go live, you can join our text alert. So you can text the words Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999. Also, if you'd like some words of encouragement a couple times a week, you can also subscribe to that by texting the words I thrive, all one word, to the same number, 22999. So, last bit of information I need to talk about tonight is book club. We're going to have book club tomorrow night. The book club book that we're going to be discussing is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. That's a fantastic book. It's a short book, but lots of good information in it. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that. That takes place at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. So, welcome everybody who's joining us here. I apologize that I was not on at all last week. I like had a series of things happen. My back, I threw my back out, and then I was having sciatic issues, and on top of that, and um, it was just kind of one thing after another. So feeling much better, and yeah, back at it. So, with that said, let me see. I have a question that was emailed to me, so I'll open with that. If you have a question that you would like answered on a future live stream, you can email it to me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com. And just make sure that you include a name that you would like for me to read on the air. So, this question is from Gitsmita, who asks, she says, Dear Dana, my question is it possible for a husband who is possibly a narcissist to have poisoned his wife? But she means more, I think, in the emotional sense. Um, to have, we'll say, emotionally poisoned his wife, who might also be a narcissist to the extent where the wife has gone almost crazy. They are in their 60s. The wife keeps complaining about her husband to everybody and says that she hates him, but she won't divorce him. First question is, are they both narcissists? Or number two, has one turned the other crazy? Or number three, is one a narcissist and the other is codependent? Thanks, gets me to. So, this, I can't just say based on that kind of information, but I think at a minimum, you could say that this relationship is deeply dysfunctional. So, here's the thing with dysfunctional relationships, whatever dynamic that might play, narcissist, codependent, you name it. Dysfunctional relationships are crazy making relationships. Dysfunctional relationships are, and I think it can help to kind of break down that word. So if we think about the meaning of the word dysfunctional, something that's dysfunctional means it's not working. Just like something's functional means it is working. So, what does it mean for a relationship to actually be working? Or what does it look like for a relationship to not be working? I guess let's start with that piece of it. When a relationship is not working, there's a breakdown. uh, there's a at least one type of breakdown. There's maybe a breakdown in communication. There could be a mismatch between kind of morals and motivations, driving factors behind things, a mismatch with temperament. There could be a mismatch in terms of life goals, all kinds of things. And it's not necessarily important that all of those things line up, but it is important that the communication surrounding those differences is able to line up and that both people are able to communicate effectively communicate effectively. In order for effective communication to happen, that requires a certain degree of emotional maturity. And yeah, what it means to be emotionally mature, that those skills aren't taught. And frankly, I don't think um, without the kind of that more formalized information or more structured information, more formalized knowledge surrounding emotional maturity, I really don't think that most people are going to get there on their own because we all tend to think that the way we do things is normal and the way that we do things is right. And because of that, we all have blind spots in the way that we think and the way that we behave that we're not aware of. And this is especially the case if you have, um, you know, people that are deeply dysfunctional. They oftentimes are incredibly defensive. They're not open to examining their own, their own thinking or behaving. There's lots of challenges there. So, is this relationship narcissist or whatnot? I can't say. Um, we can't even really say if they're necessarily codependent because we don't know what the motivation is for keeping them together. So codependency is it's normally understood as an excessive emotional reliance on another person. But sometimes people stay married for reasons that have nothing to do with emotional reliance. Sometimes it can be financial. Sometimes it can be religious. Sometimes it can just kind of be social expectation or cultural expectation. So again, it's kind of hard to say why they are still together. But at a minimum, it sounds deeply dysfunctional um, and that's the thing with with deeply well, not even deeply, just dysfunctional relationships in general. They're exhausting and it's crazy making. And um, decades of a relationship like that can lead a person to being absolutely just fried emotionally and mentally and physically. They're experiencing a lot of anxiety, depression, hopelessness, overwhelm. Uh, just the stress is off the charts in those kinds of relationships. So uh, I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay, so let me hop into the chat here. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Martia says, "Hey, I'm glad you're about doing better, Dana." Well, thank you. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, and let's see here. If you guys are just hopping on, just as a reminder, we're going to have book club tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be discussing the book, The Four Agreements. So it's a short book, quick read, enjoyable book. I'll be curious to see what you guys have to say about it. And let's see, Anne says that she just ended a relationship that felt so good, but it was so exhausting after just 2 weeks. It came and went that fast. Yeah. And yeah, it's kind of the more we get in tune with ourselves and realize what is nourishing for us, what is draining for us, oftentimes these relationships last shorter and shorter because we just realize, you know what, I need to have peace in my life. And if I can't, I just can't. I can't be in a relationship with somebody where it's just constant agitation and issues that don't get solved and kind of blame shifting and denying and lying and all of that. It's too much. Okay, let's see. Amber is just saying that she was just recently experienced some sexual harassment at work and says that just makes me sad that anybody experiences sexual harassment. And this job has had a very thorough training that we have to do. It was just so gross what he said to me, and I was too shocked to respond. Yeah, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That is disturbing and upsetting and, uh, just completely yeah, just completely uncalled for and inappropriate, and I'm just sorry that that happened. It sucks. And it sucks because then it makes that going to work it creates all of this tension and anxiety that really shouldn't be there. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on how you're gonna handle that moving forward? Are you gonna say something to him or something to a supervisor, or what are your thoughts about that? Let's see. Gloria says, I have been listening to a book called When Loving Him is Hurting You by David Hawkins. Do you like the book? Would you recommend it? I'm always looking for good books to add to book club list. So let me copy and paste that title somewhere real quick here so we can look into it. Let's see. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, well, thanks, Anne. She says, "You've helped me tremendously, and I feel like you've been my best friend. I just love your personality and wisdom." Oh, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, and I'm really glad that I am able to kind of create that space where people feel heard and supported. So, thank you. Changing my life says my body is so beat from deep cleaning. I probably won't last long today. Eh, Yeah, it sounds like a hot bath is in your near future, if I had to guess. So yeah, deep cleaning, man, not talk about good exercise, huh? Let's see. Here, let me scroll down. Fatima is saying, now that the electricity is back on, I can attend these live streams. There was a 3-day outage here where I lived. Yes, absolutely. I know those down south, especially in Texas, really got hammered by this storm. And I'm so glad that things are better. That was such a scary time. I had family down there, and they lost uh, they lost electricity for a while. Then they had a pipe break, and it was kind of one thing after another. But gosh, compared to what some of the other people were going experiencing down there, they had it pretty mild, but it was still incredibly inconvenient and I think pretty scary. Miss Leah says, I had a therapist tell me I should still have a relationship with my mother after no issues had been solved. Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of therapists not telling clients what to do in general because they don't have to live with the consequences of those actions. So, um, I think it's more important to support people in um, kind of the decisions that they want to make and be a place more of act as more of a sounding board for them. The challenge with well, there's multiple reasons why I don't think kind of trying to control another person's behavior is good, but especially if the person has experienced a controlling relationship in the past with a parent or a significant other or abuse of any kind, then all that person is doing is they're kind of going from one controlling person to the next. And it's unfortunate when that next controlling person is a therapist or a life coach or whoever it might be. So it's a very important part of healing to be able to get to that place where you can, um, well, and it sounds like in many ways that you're there, where you're able to kind of agree to disagree with somebody. So you're not so heavily influenced by um, their opinion, and you're able to kind of come up with your own solution and to validate yourself and the path that you think is the best in whatever that might be. Michelle says, a woman I know online is still in touch with her abusive ex. I wish I could help her see that no contact will help her heal. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's unfortunate. I think there's quite a few people out there that, if they have children with an abusive ex, they feel this need to, um, and maybe not even need, they have this kind of like misconception. That's probably a better word to use. Misconception that they have to stay in contact with this other person because they have a child together. And unfortunately, a lot of times with an abusive person, staying and keeping contact open with them, for whatever reason, it just opens us up for more abuse. And the reality is, thankfully, we live in the day and age where there's third party, uh, apps, there's mediators, there's all different kinds of things that the court system offers, which is fantastic, which can help people in those situations. Or if you have an abusive ex, that you don't need to be on the receiving end of all that garbage, that you can use one of those third party applications and yeah, it's easier to just kind of carve out some peace in your life that way. Uh, oh, well, thanks, Marzia. She says, Dana, I've never given you props publicly, but I'm utterly grateful for your existence. I followed you for over 4 years. Oh, well, mm, well, thank you. That really means a lot to me. So, Farah asks, how do you combat workplace narcissists? It's the same in interacting or kind of handling narcissists in any environment. It's the same, and it's through the boundaries. The challenge, the added or different challenge at work is, we can't control who we work with. Well, we can to a limited extent, right? So, sometimes if you have a coworker who's just so absolutely awful and setting boundaries, talking to supervisors, doing what you can do doesn't help the situation, sometimes it's going to require switching departments or switching jobs, unfortunately. So, the way that I look at it is asking yourself, um, kind of what needs to happen in order for you to have peace in your life, and is there any change on the horizon happening to where peace in your life is going to be able to be maintained? And if not, then how much longer are you going to stay here? So, because frankly, life is just too short. And I catch heat from people about this, like, oh, you can't run away from all your problems, kind of a thing. But if you've really got a coworker who's just absolutely horrid, or who's out to get you, or and the communication is not the issue, and you've tried your best to set boundaries or to just steer clear of them or what have you, then sometimes you have to go. And there's no shame in that. It's not like they win. It's making your mental health a priority in your life. So, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Hmm. Ember says she was thinking about saying something along the lines of, "Do you use that mouth with your mother? I'm trying to find something lighthearted so work won't be uncomfortable. I'm open for suggestions." I don't know. We'll have to brainstorm a little bit on that. I'm really not sure if there's any way to bypass that level of discomfort. So my initial thought would be I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend going with something like the, "Hey, do you use that mouth with your mother?" Um, because I don't think that he'll get it. I don't think he'll get that that's wrong. So maybe something with a little bit more concreteness to it. Of I'd make it about you. So I would say something along the lines, and again, I don't know the comment. I don't know exactly what all was said, but just saying something like, "You know what? I know I might sound old-fashioned or uptight, but I don't like conversation like that." And just put it back on you. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I'll be curious to know if anybody else has any thoughts. And heck, I even struggle with something like that because it's not you. Like, his comment is inappropriate. So, I guess if you wanted to make kind of a joke about it, if he says something else, which you probably will, you could say something like, "Oh, I guess we're trying to make the workplace uncomfortable now. Okay, sexual harassment is on the radar, or sexual harassment apparently is on the menu for today." Kind of joking around, but calling it out. I like that better than kind of putting it on you. Or something snarky. If he's when he says the next thing, just saying, "Oh, I didn't realize." Like, "Oh man, I didn't realize I was getting this new job and was going to have to um, start. I don't know, becoming buddy buddy with HR so soon." Or, "Oh, you're just going. We're just going there, right? We're just opening the gate with sexual harassment." Kind of joking, but not joking. If that doesn't nip it in the bud, then maybe say like, "No, dude, for real. Like, that's too much. It's too much. Too much at work. Tone it down, and then keep it to yourself," kind of a thing. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Gloria says, "The narcissist tells me last night he doesn't care to dig into his traumas. I got a counseling appointment for April, and I'm the only one wanting change. Yeah, this is one tiny reason I am out of here." Yeah. Well, good for you for getting clear on what your deal breakers are and what does and doesn't work for you. Here's the thing. Nobody wants to dig into our traumas. Like, it's uncomfortable. Just like nobody wants to remove a splinter from their finger. It's not fun. It's not Nobody's like, "Oh man, I can't wait. That's how I want to spend Friday night." No, nobody wants to do it. But we do these things. We do difficult things because the relief that follows in the end. And um so I guess just kind of knowing that. So good for you for opening that door, and yeah. kind of exploring that new path. I think that's very exciting. So yay you. People are talking about sexual harassment at work and then kind of not knowing what to say, like, "Oh, I'm bad at comebacks," or, and I think it's worth noting that that freeze response, we all have different responses to stress. It's fight, flight, freeze are the main ones. When we're at a loss for words and or we just can't move or whatever, we're experiencing that freeze response. And here's the thing, we don't get to decide what defense our brain decides to use. Our brain just comes up with it. So that's the added challenge to this. And when we do experience that freeze defense, it can feel very um, we can almost feel complicit in the person's actions of, well, I didn't do anything to stop it, or I should have said something but I didn't, or whatnot, but it's not your fault. So kind of realizing that there's certain times where and we all have it, certain times where somebody's behavior is just so out of the blue, catches us so off guard that we just don't know what to say or do. And doing exactly, Embers, what you're doing is kind of thinking about it after the fact, realizing, you know what, we don't have to have all these snappy comebacks right away. If somebody does or says something that crosses a line with you, and uh, if you think about a good comeback or how to handle it later, you can always go back and handle it when you do know what to say or do. So take some of the pressure off of yourself to know how to respond instantly to situations like that. Uh, yeah. So uh, and also, and back to that, I understand. I just kind of wanted to reiterate. I understand the not wanting to make work uncomfortable. He's the one that's made work uncomfortable, and so I guess I just would encourage you to say something sooner than later and to set that boundary sooner than later. Speaking from personal experience, I went through a situation um, with sexual harassment and actually with a horrible coworker. And those were two of the top reasons I ended up leaving that job. But the sexual harassment, it was just flirty, 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 kind of just kept pushing the line. And it was making, and I just, uh, it flew under my radar for so long because I just thought there's no way this person's flirting with me. I thought that they were married and they were significantly older. Like the whole none, I just kind of, I guess, just kind of kept justifying and minimizing it until it kind of got to the point of, oh no, this this is very uncomfortable and very, very awkward. And um, and I kind of just I was doing everything other than asserting myself. I was kind of taking the long way. I was parking in a different spot. I was going in through a different entrance. I was doing everything I could just to avoid this person in an attempt to try to not make things awkward. But the reality was things were already awkward. And every time I made a comment, I would just feel even worse. So sometimes, I think oftentimes the best approach is the direct approach. And at a minimum, it's nipping that stuff in the bud early on. And I would maybe even start writing it all down with dating it and kind of what he said, what you said, and um, yeah. Another response might be something like, oh, because you said that you've experienced this before in other jobs, to be like, oh, if the next thing he says, oh, no, 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 no. I experienced this at the last place that I worked. I am not going to go through this again. So, you're kind of like half joking, but you're being assertive in that. And then just let him own the awkwardness. You didn't make it awkward. He did. Okay, let me see. Let me scroll up here. That's a great Great advice. UNA says, it also helps to practice boundaries in front of a mirror. Don't laugh nervously at sexual harassment. Practicing telling the mirror, I prefer to keep work professional. Yeah. Yep. I like that. I definitely love the idea of practicing boundaries and assertiveness in front of a mirror, and that way you can work on making sure that your work on the eye contact, and then also work on the other body language to make sure it's in alignment with your verbal language. So, let's see. Let me scroll up. Um, Yeah, Jennifer was saying if you let stuff like this go, it's so much harder down the line. Speaking of which, Jennifer, whatever happened, there was a guy that was creeping you out at work. This was months ago. Do you remember? You probably do because you were living it at work. But he was just like just staring at you and um kind of just watching you, just very, very unsettling, leering at you. How did that situation go? Okay, let's see here. Katie was saying in terms of narcissists and their abusers, she says, they don't want to go to counseling to be exposed. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of very understandable concerns that people have with counseling in general. Um, that like what is the process going to be like, and is that in the reality too is every therapist is different and they all have their own approaches, and and I guess if I could really make one point about that, it's that therapeutic relationship, the relationship that you have with your therapist. Therapy should feel like a safe place, and because you're becoming vulnerable, you're doing a lot of deep work, and like any other good relationship, there needs to be that level of open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, because boundaries will get crossed. It's inevitable, or comments might be made that don't land right. That happens too. So at a minimum, when you're looking around for a therapist, you want to make sure that you're able to have um, that level of communication, effective communication with them, and ideally having a good rapport with them to where you feel safe and secure, and like it's a kind of non-judgment type environment. So if a person's never been to therapy before, they don't know what to expect, and again, every therapist is different. um, and it's just when we are opening up, it can be very, like I was mentioning, comments can sometimes land wrong. And um, so if you do experience kind of mm, questions, comments, concerns, or frustrations, really important to be able to bring that up to your therapist and to have that discussion. And um, and plus, it should ideally be like a safe place for you to practice being assertive. So, and not engaging in a power struggle with your therapist becoming defensive or unable to regulate their own emotions to where or kind of them trying to control what you're doing, or um, you know any of that. So just some thoughts about that. Okay, let's see. Oh, thanks, Camilla. Says, "Hey Dana, I hope you're well. You look great." Well, thank you. I am not in pain anymore, which is a great start. So yay for that. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Uh, I speak my truth says if I'm being abused almost every day, emotionally and mentally, should I just leave to an Airbnb and forget it all? No backup plan, but to protect myself. I just can't stop panicking and disassociating. I, I don't have, again, I don't have enough context for your situation. I support your decision. If you're being abused by somebody emotionally and mentally, and if you can afford to go to an Airbnb, then at a at here, I guess here's my thought. At a minimum, it sounds like you need to get some distance from that environment. So if and yeah, that you need to get some distance, whatever that might look like. So if um, and it can help if you're feeling so panicked and you're disassociating and all of that. Odds are you're not. Your brain is really struggling with like long-term planning. So Uh, another thought might be to contact a local domestic violence center and advocates normally there 24 hours a day, every day of the year, uh, contacting them and doing some safety planning with them and saying, I really need to leave this environment. It's emotionally and mentally abusive. And I'm struggling with kind of putting all these pieces together and to figure out what that's going to look like, and they can be a good support and hopefully connect you with you might want to ask them too about a therapist if they have a domestic violence therapist on staff, which a lot of places do. So it's generally free. Jennifer says, "Hey, what happened to you last week?" What happened to your back last week? Are you okay? I am fine. It was like my body fell apart. It was ridiculous. I was having cramps. That happened. Then, which, you know, that happens every month. But then it was like a chain reaction of things. It was like to the point of not almost ridiculousness, to the point of ridiculousness. Um, I I think I tweaked my back and I was exercising, and I think that's what did it. But again, it wasn't like hardcore exercises. That's what's so embarrassing. I think it was just like it might have even been just moving down to the floor. I don't even know. I tweaked my back, something good. And then I have ongoing back issues, so I know that feeling of, oh no, it's starting to get really like stiff. My back is getting stiff. And then so then I was getting these stabbing pains in my back, and then my sciatica began acting. It's just everything began going into spasm back there. My sciatica was acting up. So I was stuck in bed for almost 4 days. And then it just kept going. So then I'm on my phone, okay? And I can't get out of bed. So I'm scrolling on my phone. Well, then I activate like my tendon in it was my left arm first, flared up to where that my arm just felt like it was on fire. So I'm like, okay, need to start icing my arm and not using my phone so much. Well, when you're just laying in bed, you're not a lot to do. So then I switched to my other arm, and then the same thing happened. I just overworked both my arms. So then by the fourth day, I was just laying there completely just trying to sleep, just trying to sleep and taking naproxen nonstop. So ridiculous. AB says, "Hello, my name's Sydney. I love to chase men. When someone likes me, I treat them terribly. I do not want to be a narcissist. How do I change this?" Okay, well, let's uh, doing that, kind of chasing after men and then treating them terribly. it doesn't necessarily make you a narcissist, but it is a sign of that there's more stuff going on there. So it's in order to stop that, it's going to be kind of evaluating what is that driving force behind that behavior. And kind of so when you're thinking about this, um, because that could it could stem from low self-esteem. It could stem from some sort of unresolved anger at and with a previous relationship. It could be a sign of fear, like fear of commitment. It could be uh, any number of things. So when you're chasing them, so okay, here's some questions to ask yourself, okay, to get you on going down that path of trying to figure this out. When you're in that mode of chasing somebody, is there genuine interest on your part? Is it like, "Oh, this guy's awesome. I wanna yeah, I wanna be with him. I wanna date him." Is there that sincerity behind those intentions to want a relationship with him? Second question is, I guess that's gonna determine a lot right there. Um, kind of intentionality. If there isn't really that sincere emotional connection, if it's just that feeling of I chase men that I'm not interested in order to get them to like me so then I can then treat them terribly, that's a little different than thinking, oh, I really like this guy, we start dating, and then I start treating him terribly. Um, so I guess that's step one, kind of figuring that out. And then step two would be, when are you treating them all terribly in kind of the same ways? And what do you think is behind the treating them terribly part? Is it fear that they're going to leave you? Is it the feeling of, well, I'm going to leave them before they can leave me? Or is it that I'm going to do all of these things to basically sabotage this relationship so they leave me? Okay. Okay. She says, I hate myself. Um, And she says, my father is verbally abusive. And, recently it said that I look terrible in sweatpants and that I look like a bum. And she says, no, I only feel disgust. I only like them when they don't like me. Okay. So this sounds like at the core that it is a self-love issue, self-esteem issue. So if we don't feel lovable, then uh yeah, if we don't feel lovable, then we have a very difficult, if not next to impossible time accepting that others could actually like us. And then that's where that feeling of disgust can come into play, because it's sort of like, ugh, I think less of you for liking me. How could you like me? What's wrong with you? Where are your standards? And then that can be where that punishing behavior comes from. And it might also be in part kind of that feeling of, yeah, I think it's just a lot of that self-loathing coming out and punishing other people. And in part, probably as a way to stay safe. So, so there's a couple pieces there with your dad's behavior. Um, my guess is if your dad's been like this towards you his whole life, um, here's the thing. It's very common for children we internalize everything. So when other people say hurtful things to us, instead of realizing that what is said is a reflection of them and what's going on with them, we internalize that and we make it about us. So because there's two ways to see a situation. So let's say, for example, um, we'll take the sweatpants example. Your dad comes by, says, "Oh, I can't believe you're wearing those sweatpants. They look terrible on you. Yeah, you look like a bum." One way to perceive that situation is to internalize it. Oh my gosh, I look like a bum. I look disgusting and horrible. That would be internalizing what he's saying. The other way would be allowing that to not internalize it. So it's basically like shutting the window on comments like that and realizing that what your dad's saying is a reflection of him. So seeing it in terms of, wow, that's really rude, or why does he care what I look like? You know, like that's about him because it is. It is. Normal, happy, well-adjusted people don't go around tearing other people down like that. Like that's 100% on him, and you don't have to own it. And so, um, part of learning to like yourself, which probably is the um, it's the first step in learning to love yourself, is to kind of to send back all of those garbage messages that you've received over the years, to kind of go back through your mind and realize that's not your stuff to carry, that you don't need to internalize all of that, that's your dad's garbage that he was dumping onto you. And um yeah, so this is where it helps to kind of be able to see your strengths, to get to know yourself, realize, okay, what is good and right with you, and to hold on to that. So when other people do say hurtful things, because it will happen, um, when other people do say hurtful things, that we're able to keep our hurt feelings and our self-worth in two different buckets. So totally understandable. Somebody says something mean and it hurts your feelings. Absolutely. But keep that in its own bucket. Don't let it spill over into your self-worth bucket. And when we're able to do that, and this takes some time and it takes some practice, but when we're able to do that, it doesn't, the damage, there really isn't long-lasting damage. So, because especially if we're able to see it as a reflection of the other person, then we don't own it at all. So, that would be the first thing. The second would be, um, yeah, I guess kind of figuring out what is likable about you. What is, uh, what are some of your strengths? Because they are there. I guarantee you, everybody has them. So, figuring out, okay, what are some things that you like about yourself on every level? What are some things that you like about yourself physically? What are some things that you like about yourself emotionally? What are some things that you like about yourself in just every single way? Are you, um, I don't know, do you like to read? Do you like to, um, are you good with makeup? Do you, um, I don't know, it sounds at a minimum, sounds like you sincerely care about other people, which might sound a little bit ironic, seeing how you spent all of this time being so destructive, but the fact that you want to stop that behavior shows that you don't want to do that. Um, are you resilient? Um, what are you curious? Are you creative? What are some of the strengths that you have? Really, really holding on, seeing those, and then holding on to those. The more that you're able to start uh, liking yourself, the less disgust, self-disgust you're going to start projecting onto others. So it's important. And I'm glad that you want to get this piece of the puzzle figured out, because it's a big piece and it's a game-changing piece. Another strategy that you can use is, and I know it might sound kind of woo-woo to some people out there, but affirmations are a big one. Like you and I had mentioned earlier, looking into the mirror and practice in her suggestion was talking in terms of setting boundaries and practicing being assertive in the mirror, but you can also do um, practice affirmations in the mirror. So affirmations are phrases. I prefer brief ones, but they kind of follow the pattern of I am blank. And like, I am capable. I am creative. I am a good listener. I am compassionate. I am a lifelong learner. Um, I am worthy of love. Do you see what I'm saying? So and the reason affirmations are so powerful is a couple different things. It allows us, we can feel when we're saying something that doesn't feel true. There's that pushback of, ooh, I don't, like, no, that doesn't resonate with me. It, that in itself can be a really fantastic tool to do some exploring around. So, because sometimes we don't know maybe how we feel or kind of where our limitations are when it comes to ourself, when it comes to our identity. So, doing those affirmations in the mirror, saying, "Oh, I love myself. Like, I am worthy of love." If you're feeling pushback against that, then there's a deeper part of you that doesn't believe that as true. When we say something out loud, that I am, let's say you're um, an artist, or let's say that you, I don't know, I'm trying to think, uh, are a certain height, maybe that's something that's more concrete. I am, I don't know, however tall you are. For me, I am about 5'1". Okay. I say that. Yep. That's the truth. It resonates. There is no pushback to that. There is no like feelings of uncomfort or discomfort. Um, I am creative. Like, yeah, that resonates with me. I am, do you see? So kind of examining what resonates with you and then what doesn't. And figuring out why certain things don't resonate with you. What's behind that pushback there? So if you're telling yourself, I am lovable, and you feel disgust or that pushback, thinking about, okay, well, why don't I feel lovable? Like, where is this resistance coming from? And maybe your brain's going to start pointing out everything that's wrong with you. Oh, well, you're not lovable because I don't know, you don't have you don't make it a certain amount of money, or you don't look like I don't know, certain m- Instagram model, or you don't because you wear sweatpants, or all of these things. So getting clear of, okay, well, why do I feel unlovable? And then once you start getting clarity on all of the reasons that you don't feel lovable, then you can start examining, like, is there truth to that? Like, is that true that if I wear sweatpants, I'm somehow unlovable? Like, no, everybody wears sweatpants, like, or most of us do, right? From time to time. Um, is it true? Do you have to be supermodel or Instagram model gorgeous in order to have a happy, healthy relationship? No, absolutely not. That's not true. So kind of examining where some of those limiting beliefs are coming from. Another thought for you. So doing some affirmations, there's tons of videos, I'm sure, on YouTube about them. I would definitely start there. It's powerful stuff, and it's an interesting practice. What I did that helped me was I would write down these affirmations on flashcards, and I would keep them in my wallet. I had a stack on my bedside table, and I had maybe 10 or 12, and I would go through them every time I thought of it or was feeling low. And it helped so, so much. Um, kind of reconnect with myself. And here's the thing too with affirmations is it's not just saying the words, it's feeling them. That's where the magic comes in. It's not just saying, uh, like, I am, whatever, I am worthy of love. It's really allowing yourself to feel that, like, at a core level, feeling what does that feel like to feel worthy of love? Like, I am worthy of love. Or I am creative. I am whatever, uh, I am a good friend, whatever it might be for you, really feeling that. And if, again, if that resistance comes up, let's say you think, okay, I am a good friend, and you're like, no, but I'm really not. Okay, well, what needs to change? Because maybe some things do need to change. What would need to change in order for you to feel like you're being a good friend? And then start taking some steps in that direction to make that happen. And then keep practicing that affirmation. I am a good friend, or I am worthy of love, and see if it starts feeling more and more true as you're taking that corrective action. Um, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Jack says, "Uh-oh." He says, "Dana, I'll tower over you if we meet in person. I'm a foot taller." Well, Jack, everybody is. I'm very used to being the shortest person in the room. And it was so funny. Somebody asked me, every now and again, people ask me how tall somebody is. And I'm like, I don't know. Everybody's always taller than me. So um, I have no, like, no perception as far as height goes. But yeah, I had a roommate, gosh, back in my early 20s, and she was about she was tall. She was about 6'1", and it was fantastic. Because right away we both were like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be able to reach everything. This is so great." And there's no fighting over cabinet space or any of that. It was very clear. She got all of the upper cabinets, I got all the lower cabinets. And I'll never forget one time, um, it was we also worked together. We worked at a group home, and she'd made a comment about, like, one day she made a comment. She got upset with me because I wasn't, because the top of the fridge was really dirty. And it dawned on me, but the way she'd said it, it was sort of like I was just being late. Like I just intentionally wasn't doing it, or, being lazy or whatnot. Um, and then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh my gosh, she can see the top of the refrigerator. Like, I can't see the top of the refrigerator. So yeah, out of sight, out of mind. It never dawned on me to clean that. So it's funny. So it's one of the things I uh, add to my cleaning list these days. Uh, okay. Um, Manson says, I want to say thank you to everyone helping me understand in this chat. I appreciate every keystroke. This channel has some good community members. Yeah, it absolutely does. And we're glad you're here. And yeah, it's a nice little, I don't want to jinx us, but we have a nice little corner of the internet over here, I have to say. Yeah, I speak my truth, says the affirmation. I am enough. I am a good person. Yeah, those are some wonderful ones too. And we can also saw, and I would encourage you, if all of the affirmations don't resonate with you, if you find pushback to all of them, try to soften them up a little bit to the point of where it does resonate with you and start there. So if So let's say, for example, if the I am lovable doesn't feel, if that feels a million miles away from how you feel inside, perhaps softening that to something that does feel more accurate. Like, you know what? There's a lot of things about me that are good. Um, that there are a lot of things about me that are good. Or uh, yeah, something along those lines. There's a lot of things about me that are good and right. Uh, and I can be a really good friend. Or I have it, I have it within you, that you have it within you. That there's lots of things about you that are good and right. Um, and yeah, so I don't know. What are your thoughts about all that? AB says, okay, yep, affirmations it is. Okay, good deal. I think that's a great place to start. I did a YouTube video a long time ago. It's like a guided meditation affirmations thing for um, people that are basically struggling with um, with low self-esteem due to a wide variety of reasons. So that one's geared towards building self-esteem. There's some other wonderful, if you're into guided meditations at all, Michael Seeley is also fantastic. Jason Stevenson, those two are my favorite, and definitely worth checking out. Um, let's see. Let me. AB says, "Thank you. I'm trying to start my own business and I'm miserable. Both my parents own their own businesses. My real passion is to paint, but I do not feel that this is good enough." Okay, so exploring, sometimes when we're feeling stuck like that, we're at a crossroads. It can help to try to get as much, I think in general in life, right? It's getting as much clarity as we possibly can around whatever, wherever we're stuck. So, okay, so if your real passion is to paint, but that you don't feel that this is good enough, so then asking yourself, well, what is your definition of good enough? Or yeah, or what is the definition of good enough that you're operating based off of? Because it might not even more likely than not, it's probably not your definition of good enough. It's somebody else's definition that you've picked up along the way. So what makes a certain business idea good enough? Because lots of people judge success in a lot of different ways. So is it money? You know, if you were to make six figures a year off of your painting, would that feel like it's good enough? Or is the stuckness coming from the type of business? Like, oh, I need to, you said your dad's your landlord, so I'm guessing he's in real estate of some kind. So is it the more of that, no, no, it needs to be, I need to be in real estate, or I need to be in some sort of um that kind of more traditional form of investing type thing. Is that where you're thinking that makes it real? I see so many people sell their dreams short, and it's tragic. It really is. And so maybe, I think that the art majors, or artists in general, have kind of kind of gotten that rap over the years of, oh, you're never going to go anywhere with that, right? It's really difficult to be an artist, and this, that, and the other. Well, the reality is it's difficult to do anything. It's difficult to be a successful real estate investor. It's difficult to, um, be a successful attorney. It's difficult to be a successful therapist. Success takes work. And um and the cool thing with creativity of any kind is we have the internet. So no longer gone are the days where artists had to, lug around their whole portfolio and go from gallery to gallery, hope to get in. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. Now, actually making money off of your artwork, it really involves learning about online business, and it involves marketing and basically Instagram, and I would start there. So, and maybe it's something where you're like, I don't know, this feels like a much more of a gamble of trying to make a living selling artwork than it does kind of following in more of a quote unquote traditional path. And so maybe that's something that you're like, okay, you know what? This is where my heart is, and this is what I'd like to do. And so maybe I'm going to do this kind of part time, because odds are, if you love to paint, you're doing that anyhow. So then the next part of it, the really diving into understanding Instagram marketing and how to set up like a Shopify store and all of this kind of stuff. Um, that really doesn't take that long to figure out. And it is really rewarding once you do kind of start getting like, quote unquote proof of concept, when people do start buying your artwork and you are hearing from people that they like what you do. It just really fans those flames of, oh my gosh, this might be doable. So I guess yeah, I don't don't sell your dream short right out of the gate. Kind of figure out, and it helps too to find a mentor in whatever you're doing. So, and it could be it could be a formal mentor, or it could be somebody that's more informal, like business coaches. That would be a good example of some more formal mentorship. But even informal mentors. So finding like following other artists on Instagram and seeing what they're doing, and you can kind of tell, like, okay, these people, they're really crushing it, like they're selling their stuff, they've really got this huge following. Reverse engineering, what are they doing that's working, and how can you do something similar in terms of their marketing approach. So, but again, a lot of it's going to depend on feeling what feels changing your thoughts around what feels quote unquote good enough and what feels like a valid way to earn a living. And this is where it also comes back to learning to validate yourself, because there's no shortage of people out there that will tell you that you can't do something, or even that you can do something. And kind of getting grounded enough in yourself where you're like, okay, you know what? This is what's comfortable for me. Like maybe I start doing this kind of part time. Maybe I just start following some like, business coaches on YouTube, and um, you know, maybe you don't tell your parents if they're not supportive. Like telling people that are supportive of what you're doing, and kind of giving yourself um, a time, I don't know, a couple years of runway to get going with it and just see where it goes. Okay, so let me get back in the chat here. Um, let's see. Let me scroll up. Let's see. Jennifer, I think, is talking about EMDR. I'm missing part of this here. There we go. Jennifer says, when an EMDR session is complete, do you remember it, or is it so unconscious that you forget it, like when being hypnotized? You probably depends person to person. I wouldn't say that it's an unconscious thing, but it can be kind of a winding process. So, um, Because it's kind of following it's following this trail. So if you're starting with one experience, let's say, one uncomfortable experience, and then you're going to be doing that bilateral stimulation, whether it's like tapping or the eye movements, and then kind of seeing what comes up for you, and then you're going to be going with that, and then seeing what comes up, and then going with that, and then seeing what comes up, and then going with that. And so there's a lot of things, different things going on. uh, and then the EMDR therapist is going to be checking in periodically to see kind of what your level of uh, distress is. Like, okay, well, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being very distressing, 0 being not at all, uh, kind of where are you with this experience now? So it can be, I guess what I'm saying is it can be a lot to remember, and it's not necessarily that you remember every single thing that comes up for you. It's um yeah, it's more of the um the statement, because you're looking at, in part, kind of core beliefs that you have surrounding uncomfortable experiences or traumatic experiences, and then you're overriding that with positive core beliefs. So the positive core belief, so by the end of an EMDR session, and again, it's going to depend on the person, it's going to depend on the therapist, um, and how long your sessions are and this kind of thing. Sometimes you can get an experience, that emotional charge behind that experience. Sometimes you can get it all the way down to 0, but sometimes you might only be able to get it down to like a 3 or a 4. And I think it was Grace who was saying in the chat that there are skills. There's a what's known as like a container exercise. So the things that don't get all the way, the emotions that don't get processed all the way down to 0, that you're able to then put them in what's known as you're visualizing a container, that it's like a safe place for these uncomfortable emotions to, or thoughts to kind of exist in, to when you are ready to reopen that. So maybe perhaps like in your next therapy session, uh, that they're in there, so that you're not just leaving a session feeling fully activated, or that there is this kind of a lot of this unprocessed stuff swimming around that you don't know what to do with. Um, so there's that. Um, I would say I don't know. I guess everybody's experience really varies, but probably the more common experience with leaving a session is, it's a sense of relief if it's done right. I know some people here have had some bad experiences with EMDR, and um, the only thing I can think of is that they kind of dove right into some really heavy stuff, and it was too much too soon. So, um, because normally, um, if you're kind of wading into the deep end of the pool, it might be heavy stuff, but it's still within what's known as that person's like range of tolerance, to where they're not completely, um, you know, close to having a breakdown about it. Like, it's uncomfortable, but it's not to where they're barely hanging on kind of level. Um, Yeah, and then hopefully leaving that session feeling like, wow, okay, yeah, like I had a lot of those really painful emotions discharged, and I'm feeling a lot lighter and a lot more optimistic and a lot more empowered, and that new and empowered core belief is kind of taking root, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I think hopefully that's kind of the goal, at least I should say, for a session to end like that. Um, I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay, let me scroll down. Jennifer's asked, do people still do hypnotherapy these days? And if so, I wonder what the success rate is with it. Hypnotherapy is still a thing, yeah, and it is still popular in certain circles. Um, I In terms of success rate, my guess would be that it's actually probably pretty high, but it's gonna depend on the issue. Um, uh, EMDR, there's certain elements, uh, that are kind of somewhat correlated with hypnotherapy, um, and it can a person has to be open to, just like with hypnotherapy, you have to kind of be open to it and be open to exploring and sharing and kind of, you know, all of that. So there's that level of susceptibility that's needed for a person. If a person's defensive the whole time, then the needle's not going to move very much. Uh, Oh, I love that. Gloria says, I really want to be healed so I can help others through. I had a vision in the tub this morning to have a safe place for abused women to get rest and figure out what's next in life, like a safe house. That's awesome. Yeah. And um, yeah, well, we'll see how that unfolds. That's very cool. Let's see here. I Speak My Truth says, I've been thinking about trying hypnosis to break trauma bonds since it works on removing limiting beliefs that change our behavior. Yeah, I would encourage you to try EMDR because it's going to more directly address that. Well, it's faster for one, and it has a lot more research behind it in terms of being evidence-based for treating trauma specifically. And it gets to the core of um, um, the pain of an issue, kind of that negative core belief that's tied in with that pain, and then very clearly identifying a different belief to replace it. You're checking in with how true something feels for somebody. um, it's Yeah, it's good stuff. So let's see. Okay, Joey asks, do I have a right to be rude and mean back to people who are being that way to begin with? Being a gray rock is not having an effect. I don't like letting my quote unquote ugly side out, but when I do, people stop. Do you have a right? Hold on, I gotta stand up. Do you have a right to be rude and mean? Hmm. It's understandable that being rude and mean as a response to other people are being rude and mean, it feels justified. So, uh, I guess on one level, is it justified? Yeah, you could say that it is. However, I think the bigger question is it actually helpful? And more often than not, it's not. So, and the reason I like to focus on that is it's not only uh, it sinks us. It's more damaging to us than it is to other people. So yeah, might they deserve it to get kind of put in their place, or to be on the receiving end of you lashing out? They might absolutely have done something so egregious that kind of going off on them might be considered justified. But the thing is, it diminishes you, and it so if you can see the other person's behavior as it's a reflection of them, it's a reflection of their limitations, of their understanding, of their own ignorance, of whatever it is. We don't have to um, make their hurtfulness or their awfulness about us. Like we can have that be about them. I guess my other question is, if this is such an ongoing thing where you've got people in your life that are rude and mean, then at a minimum, some boundaries need to be examined. So if gray rock isn't working, then getting some sort of physical distance is going to be the next step. And if they just don't respect your boundaries, they kind of keep coming at you, then something else has to give. Because these kinds of dynamics, dysfunctional dynamics, when people are rude, mean, belittling, whatever it is that they're doing, it if we're in that level of chaos and hostility over time, it's going to really take its toll on us. And so I think kind of looking at it from that angle of it's really important that you are able to keep a pretty high degree of peace in your life and to cut out relationships like that, really limit them as much as you possibly can, because they can be like a cancer in your life. And it's just um, it's it's important that we're able to have boundaries around that, so we're not getting sucked into things that really end up sinking us in the long term. Okay, let me see. Kayla asks, any advice on how to go about finding a therapist? I'm hesitant to experience the exhaustion of cycling through more counselors than necessary to find the right one. Sure. Some advice about that is, uh, well, I guess first and foremost, I would encourage you to find a therapist who's skilled in EMDR. If you're here in these chats, then odds are that you're going to see some pretty good results from EMDR. So I would start there. So just searching EMDR therapist, kind of in your area, is a good place to start. The second one is, it's not so much about finding like the right therapist, it's about finding like the right enough therapist. And the right enough therapist, just like the right enough, a right enough friend, a right enough job, a right enough significant other, a lot of that's going to boil down to effective communication. Is And so and I would have that conversation up front with a therapist, well, with anybody, really, but saying, kind of really reiterating of, okay, this is the relationship that I'm looking for. And um I've had some bad experiences in the past, and this is what made it bad. And so moving forward, because like we were talking about earlier, especially as a therapist, and been being a client to other therapists and kind of being around all of that, it's challenging uh, to kind of as a therapist, you're not gonna say and do all of the right things all of the time. So uh, even if you're the most well-intentioned, skilled, uh, highly trained person, sometimes things just land in a way that you didn't intend. And this is why it's so important uh, to have that really quality therapeutic relationship for both people, to be able to come into this relationship from a place of curiosity and not defensiveness and not judgment. So you're coming at it from a place of, if your therapist says or does something that doesn't sit right with you, that you feel comfortable bringing it up, and that your therapist is able to able to listen, and to then kind of adjust his or her approach, or that you're able to have, at a minimum, you're able to have a conversation surrounding that. So that's important. So I guess talking ahead of time, before you really even kind of get into things, if there's a lot of therapists will offer like an initial consultation. So that would be a good time to do something like that, because you're your relationship with your therapist should be one of the healthiest relationships you have in your life. And it's a great place to practice boundaries, standards, deal breakers, assertive communication, um, all in to kind of, and for your therapist to be that safe person for you, to role to and also to role model those skills. So I guess having that conversation about effective communication early on is vital. So if the therapeutic relationship does kind of take a turn, or they do say something that doesn't sit right with you, or if they want to, if you're exploring trauma and they do want to get into something that you're not ready to get into, that you feel comfortable asserting yourself and saying, I don't know if that's a good place for me to start, or that feels really intimidating. I'm nervous, or I'm hesitant to start off in like the deep end of the pool. And then having that conversation around that, instead of what a lot of people do is they go into therapy thinking, okay, well, the therapist is the professional here. The therapist knows best. I'm kind of along for the ride. So I'm just going to let the therapist set the pace. And, um, and if the therapist doesn't agree with me, or has issues, or um, is confrontational, or there's something in his or her approach they don't like, then I guess that's just something wrong with me, because they're the professional. And that's that's not accurate. I totally understand why people think that, but it's not accurate. So it's important that you realize that going into that, therapy is something that is done with the other person. It's not done to them. So it really needs to have that sense of mutuality, that you're on this path together, and that they're coming from a place of complete acceptance and an attitude of non-judgment. So those are some things that I would look for. My goal in the next my goal for this year is to work on growing a team, to where when people do ask, um, if they can find somebody, that I'll be able to have a team of people that I know with absolute certainty how they were trained and what skills they have, and um, that it's a collaborative process, and all of that. Um, so I don't know. I'm hoping by July that ball will be in motion, because yeah, it's hard enough to heal. And finding a therapist, um it shouldn't be this hard to find people that are skilled in helping. So okay, let me scroll up here. No, I didn't, Embers. I will check. She says, did you happen to see the EMDR notes I wrote out for you by email 2 weeks ago? No, that's weird, because I was just in my email tonight. Let me look. My email, I will say, my email is it's weird. It's through HostGator, and it's like this very old school platform, and um there's a very solid chance that I'm not looking at things right. Did you respond to another email? And did you send it to the Dear Dana email? I guess are my questions, so I know what I'm looking for. Uh, yeah. Okay, so let me see. Let me scroll up. Looks like Mare has a question, but let me find it. Mare. Okay, well, while I'm looking for Mare's question, it looks like AB was saying, in terms of what makes it real, she says it makes it real when it's a huge company and something that honestly gives me like fame, or like it sounds like social recognition, which says so much. And she says, my mom always shamed me on my paintings. Mm. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that you had to experience that. And um, so that would be another one of those things with the mom always shaming you about your artwork, uh, to kind of realize, okay, you know what? That's her opinion. It doesn't make it the absolute truth. And especially with art, art is very subjective. So sometimes artwork is amazing and it goes unappreciated, and sometimes it's awful and people think it's amazing. So you just, um, it's all in the eye of the beholder kind of a thing. It's not so much whether or not it's good or bad. It's more of like, is there is if you're looking at it from a business point of view, is this marketable? Are there people out there that are interested in it? So okay, let's see. Let me. Oh, Gloria says Michael Seeley and Jason who? Unguided meditation. Jason Stevenson is his name. AB says the stickiness. She says it's definitely my narcissistic mother. That stickiness is coming from the type of business having to be in charge, having to be better than them. Mm, yeah, I get it. It's This is so much easier said than done. If you can kind of shift things around to where you really focus on running your own race, your life will be so much more enjoyable, and you will experience so much more happiness and contentment if you're able to do that. And that is a process. That is not an event. That is a process, and it's ongoing. And again, it's easier said than done. Um, just my own personal experience. I had an uncle who was incredibly narcissistic, and I also grew up kind of feeling less than, uh, kind of my goals and dreams and my path. I didn't fit in with a lot of my family, and I was always embarrassed, and so I kept all of that kind of. But I knew I had potential. I knew I was capable of doing things in this life, and but it wasn't the conventional path. And I had this uncle, not and we didn't even see him that often, but I had this uncle who's incredibly narcissistic and just very arrogant. And I had all of this defensiveness. Like I just wanted to I just kind of wanted to show him. That was my mindset. And I remember when he died, one of the thoughts that I had was, it was almost this kind of panicked feeling of I didn't know what to do, because I wanted to prove myself. And then when he died, it was sort of like, well, now how do I prove myself? Like, he died too soon. I needed to show him. I needed to show him that I was capable, and um, that I wasn't, I don't know, somebody to just kind of brush aside or to gloss over. And so it was a very strange experience realizing that, and then realizing, okay, I need to find my own motivation for doing what I'm doing and not have it be kind of tied to um, other people. Because yeah, what happens if other people go away, or what happens if they start all of a sudden becoming very supportive? Like, we can't have our motivation tied to them. So, and then here's the thing too, is even if it is tied to them and you're like, okay, you know what, I'm going to prove to them, and I'm going to become an attorney, and I'm going to open up my own law firm, and I'm going to go follow this traditional path that's totally not me, but I'm going to make all kinds of money, and I'm going to drive a big house and big fancy car, and I'm just going to stick it to them, right? I am worthy. I do matter, and I am intelligent and capable, and all of these things. There does come a point, and I think a lot of people get to this point, we call it a midlife crisis, in their 40s, where they realize, oh my gosh, I've been so focused on climbing the ladder But I didn't realize until now that that ladder has been leaning up against the wrong wall. And who am I living my life for? And what am I doing? And maybe you do super achieve all of these things, and you have this society's idea of success. But if it's not you, if it's not an authentic expression and reflection of you, then it's gonna feel pretty empty. So, Tony Robbins has a lot of great things. He has a lot of great things to say. And one of them is, if you want to start living, if you want to change your life, or the fastest way to change your life is to start asking yourself better questions. And I agree with that 100%. And so asking yourself about questioning these things. Okay, well, what does success look like for you? Like, how will you know uh, when you feel successful? And then the flip side of that is, how will you know when you're traveling down the wrong path? And at what point would you turn around and do something different? And uh, yeah, just kind of exploring all of that around that. Like, what would this look like? Or how much, and what happens if what happens if you become an artist and you're making 7 figures a year, right? You're a multimillionaire and you got diamond rings on every finger, kind of a thing. And what if your parents still don't think that it's valid, that it's a fluke? Because a lot of people do still think that with more artistic professions. If you're going to become an actor or a YouTuber or anything, an author, a painter, oh, you just somehow lucked out. There's people have all kinds of different ways of minimizing the um, kind of the hard work behind the scenes because they don't see it. They just see the end result. And especially haters. The haters of the world out there are probably never going to give you the credit that you deserve. And so then kind of thinking, okay, well then, like, what does that mean for you? And does it need to even mean anything? Can you just chalk it up to, like, haters are going to hate, kind of a thing, and drive on with your life? Sometimes it can set a person free, just realizing, oh my gosh, I've been going down this one path because I wanted my mom's approval, or I wanted my dad's approval. And then you realize, after you hit, generally, I think people kind of start having those moments when they get into their 40s, when they're like, oh, I don't need their approval. Like, that's like my inner 8-year-old who's needing that approval. I don't need it. I don't need it because I'm never going to get it anyhow. And even if I did, like, their approval means nothing either way. It's fleeting. It's fleeting. So, okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. See if I can find that murmur. Um, okay, and I am not seeing it. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. What? Manson says, I'm in therapy, but my therapist doesn't believe in narcissistic personality disorder. Um, that's I don't even know what to say to that, other than that's just, at a minimum, it's very bizarre. And and concerning, bizarre and concerning. And um, yeah, yeah. And frankly, I would kind of even wonder, like, what else does your therapist not believe in? Like, does she or he understand that not that there are some people out there that have a very damaged and deeply dysfunctional way of interacting, looking at and interacting with the world, and that their selfishness, um, you know, causes profound trauma on those around them. Manson asks, okay, so here's a question. If we were abused and understand that, then why doesn't the obsession for them just stop? I've been seeking this answer. Then it goes back to the echoes of I'm mental. Was there more to this comment? And Manson says, oh, I know I'm codependent. I admit that hands down. Well, okay, so here's the thing with abuse, especially I think when there is that level of obsessiveness present, there's also what's known as trauma bonds that are present. And if I had, there's probably research behind there. Actually, there very well may not be research behind this. But if I had to put money on it, my guess would be that those with an anxious style of attachment and trauma bonds go hand in hand. So when we tend to stay in an abusive situation, um, and we're on in this kind of anxious, nervous scramble to keep them around, to keep the relationship going, all of that's coming from, more often than not, from that anxious style of attachment. So uh, that's part of it. So if I were you, it's worth looking into different attachment styles and understanding that anxious or anxious avoidant, more so anxious style of attachment. I think that'll um, um, kind of create a lot of aha moments for you. And then also looking up trauma bonds. So, trauma bonds are these very intense bonds that we can feel when we go through the highs, the very high highs and the very low lows of an abusive relationship. So, it's these bonds that are created by it's oftentimes by the relief of the high, because the lows are so low. It's the scary feeling of, oh my god, this person's going to leave, or they're going to hurt me, or this relationship is going to somehow end. And then all of a sudden they come back, or things are okay, and then we feel so relieved and, oh my gosh. And it's those highs and lows, that level of intensity that those highs and lows create, are that's what's often confused as love. And because you have this mix of pain and pleasure there, it's also on a chemical level, it's this, you're just, your body, your brain is just getting doused in adrenaline and cortisol and oxytocin, and a lot of intense chemicals are going on, which that's part of what creates that level of intensity. That intensity is not there in healthy relationships. And this is also why healthy relationships tend to feel really boring or very flat for people. And unfortunately, because they do feel so flat, um, it can feel like, okay, well, then this somehow must not be love. That love is the kind of feeling that it makes a person want to kill, or pushes them to the edge, or um, makes you want to go stalk a person. That's not love. Like, that's obsessiveness. And that obsessiveness, more often than not, comes from an activated attachment style, that anxious attachment style. Or on the abusive side of things, it's about power and control. It's either coming from that anxious style of attachment, or it's coming from that level of entitlement and power and control of, well, who are you? You're not going to leave. I'm going to, you don't decide when this relationship's over. I do, kind of a thing. So understanding anxious style of attachment, trauma bonds, will, I think, help you to kind of see why people, some of the reasons why people stay, I guess. Here's the thing too. Once you see this, it really is. It's like seeing the wizard behind the curtain. It it kind of it loses a lot of its power when you and then you realize, oh my gosh, you know what? I can have these intense feelings and I can still leave a relationship. Like this isn't love. It's not romantic. It's not anything other than pure dysfunction. And so telling yourself, God, there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there for you. Like that level of craving, that obsessive behavior, that's your brain trying to sort through that whole chemical cocktail of these highs and lows. If those highs and lows weren't there, then odds are your attraction to that person wouldn't be there either. So kind of realizing, okay, this is not love. This is not even in the same zip code as love. This is just drama and chaos and dysfunction. And it can feel exciting because it's so unpredictable, but this is not love. Like love feels calm, love feels safe, love feels secure, love feels supportive. Love doesn't seek to agitate or provoke or um, it doesn't cause unhinged neediness. These kinds of things. Love is reassurance. Um, it feels nourishing because it is. AB says, I was just thinking about how narcissists can derail real passions as a kid. Oh, absolutely. They can even derail a person from themselves completely. So it's not, and frankly, I would say it's more common than not if a person has a narcissistic parent, because a narcissistic parent, it's, they're oftentimes very controlling. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, it doesn't matter. But the kind of the messages that are sent and well, and not only that, but the parts of that child that are being validated are the parts that the parent agrees with. So let's say, for example, you have a very controlling or narcissistic parent who has very set ideas of what kind of child they want to have. So let's say you have a son, for example. This person has a son and they really want to have a football player, a kid that plays sports, um, um, yeah, a kid that's really into sports. Let's say they're huge sports fans and that's what they want. They're pushing their son into all kinds of sports and the kid's like he's not into sports. He's into Legos or he's into chess and or Dungeons and Dragons, right? He's not a football player kind of a kid. If the parent doesn't agree with that and if they don't respect that level of individuality of yes, that might be their son, but he's also a person and letting him be his own person and whatever and being fluid and flexible enough to be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to have to kind of adjust my parenting to meet the needs of my child. If my child is this my fantasy of the kind of child that I want, if my kid's not it, then they're not it. And I need to be able to self-soothe my own issues surrounding that and kind of let go of my own dreams and fantasies about that and be there for the child that I have, not for the fantasy one that doesn't exist. But for narcissists, in particular, narcissistic people, they try to take what they have and then hammer that person into the box that they want them to be in. And so anything else that doesn't fit in that box, it's shamed, it's invalidated, it's minimized, it's ignored, it's denied, it's all kinds of things. And children that grow up in homes like that later, well, then even as kids, but especially later on in life, are often they have really they don't know who they are. They can be very disconnected from their wants, their dreams, their thoughts, their feelings. Um, they just don't really have a solid sense of identity because everything that kind of made them was kind of shamed out of them or silenced, or they willfully erased that thinking, oh, well, my parents know best. What I want must be bad. So I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to be that. And um and like I said, and then when people kind of hit 40, that's when they start realizing, hey, wait a minute, no, I think this is important to me. Or yeah, I've been living my life, I've been living this life trying to please my parents or trying to be what I thought society wanted me to be, and this is not who I am. And so that's a big part of kind of stepping into your own and getting grounded in yourself, is figuring out kind of who are you and who are you not. And also realizing that who you are is gonna it's gonna ebb and flow, and it's gonna grow and change, because you're gonna grow and change. So your interests at the age of 17 might be very different than your interests, and probably will be very different than they will be at the age of 27 or 37 or 87. And that's okay. So kind of giving yourself the room and space to explore and figure out, okay. And then too, kind of thinking of life, your life, you're the author of your own life. Okay. And that this book that is your life, because you are the author of it, you get to decide when each chapter starts and ends. You get to decide who the main characters are, who the supporting characters are, the location, the themes, all of this. You take a very, very active part in this. And that's powerful stuff. So, kind of thinking about in terms of, yeah, you know what, your life, all of our lives are lived in chapters. And you have a lot more power maybe over that than you've ever realized. So, kind of asking yourself, okay, if I were to start a new chapter tomorrow, what would what would that look like? What do I want to be in that chapter? What kind of personality traits would I like to cultivate? What And then also, what things do I want to leave behind? And what kind of people do I want to have in this next chapter? And then what kind of people do I think uh, maybe kind of need to fade into the background, or what kind of relationships need to experience some sort of degree of change? What relationships might need to change, and in what ways, for who you are in this next chapter? Let's see. Let me scroll here. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Okay, let me just jump to the bottom here, because I think I'm. Okay. So I speak my truth was saying something about, I feel anxious about leaving my mom because her behavior. Oh, I feel anxious about leaving her because my behavior keeps changing to a, but you can't because that's your mom. So, okay. So it sounds like another limiting belief you have there is uh, that that you're not allowed to have boundaries with the parent, or that you're not allowed to, yeah, you're not allowed to have boundaries with the parent, or that you're not allowed to be assertive with the parent. So that would be the one that if you're going to kind of drill down into something, it would be that that the belief of, okay, I am not allowed to have boundaries with the parent. That's a very limiting core belief, and that's a problem. And the reality is, as an adult, well, especially as an adult, right? That we need to have boundaries with everybody in our life in order for relationships to work. And that boundaries aren't to punish other people. They're there to so we can be protective of ourselves. And healthy relationships aren't just somehow magically healthy. Like we don't just, like we were talking about earlier, we don't just find like the right person. Um, Although that is part of it, but healthy relationships, they're not so much found, they're created, and they're created through boundaries and assertiveness and effective communication and active listening. And there's a lot of uh, that skill set that's absolutely mandatory in order for a relationship to be functional. So if we have that limiting belief that boundaries are something, that boundaries are bad, that boundaries are mean, or that boundaries are rude, or boundaries are inappropriate, then we're going to have a hard time setting them. If we change that mindset to are boundaries are the foundation of what make a relationship healthy. If a relationship is ever going to work, it's going to be because of boundaries, not in spite of them. So getting kind of reconfiguring how we think about boundaries. Now, this isn't to say that the other person's going to like having boundaries, that they're going to like your boundaries. But again, this isn't about them. It's not about punishing them. It's not about appeasing them. It's about protecting yourself. And so when we are able to set boundaries and kind of knowing, okay, is this time for me to leave? Is this too much? Is this not enough? Like we're able to continually check in with ourselves and figure out, okay, how is this feeling for me? Is this still working for me? And if not, then doing something different. Um, because kind of keeping a relationship going that's so deeply toxic that you feel like it's going to give you a heart attack or it's going to kill you or that you're losing your mind kind of thing, that's not a relationship. And frankly, odds are it's not enjoyable for your mom either. So it's difficult to try to, it can be difficult to try to turn that ship around in setting some boundaries, getting some distance, doing all of that. But uh, it's it's the only way. Yeah. I Speak My Truth says, yeah, I've noticed that other people have said, oh, well, you can't because that's your mom. And that I've picked up these beliefs as my own. Yeah. And again, if you kind of reframe your understanding of boundaries as, again, it's not something that's mean, it's not something that's rude, um, or that it's meant to punish another person. It's to where that two people can coexist with um, with peace in their life. Like that's kind of the goal of boundaries. And sometimes it's there's more distance needed, a lot more distance needed. And then that's where it's going to be kind of up to you, but it's not about punishing or anything like that. So when other people say, oh, well, you can't, basically, you can't set boundaries because that's your mom, then thinking in terms of, well, boundaries are healthy and necessary. So then reframing it to, I have to set boundaries because that's my mom. So if there's any type of glimmer or idea of that you want to have some sort of semblance of a relationship with her down the road, it's going to be because of boundaries, not your lack of them. And setting boundaries with somebody is, um, it's how it's how we start to have relationships that work. And it's how we make relationships safe for ourselves and for other people. I know that's, you know, again, it's easier said than done, but it, uh, moving in that direction, uh, it's, it's the most kind of, I don't know, relationship building kind of peaceful way to get peace back into your life, I guess. Um, let's see. Let me scroll. Sorry, still scrolling here. Okay. Monica says, "Hey Dana, how do I get over the feeling of betrayal when I talk to my narcissistic mother? I feel like when I talk to her, I have this feeling of distrust. She left me when I was having a miscarriage. How can I maintain some sort of contact with her, but also not too close for her to hurt me?" Okay. Well, it makes sense as to why you're having that feeling of uneasiness, right? Of distrusting her. If she left you at a time when you needed her, then that's why that you're feeling that way. So that makes complete sense. It is, I guess, it would depend on the relationship that you have. If um, if you feel like, ideally, you'd be able to have that conversation with her and say, I was really hurt when you left, and I was at this very vulnerable time in my life and I really needed you. But if she's just going to get defensive and kind of argue her point instead of be able to kind of receive what you're saying, then sometimes those conversations just can't be had, unfortunately, and then you're left to kind of nurse those wounds of hurt on your own. Um, in terms of maintaining some sort of contact with her, it's going to involve, if you're not able to, I guess, be assertive with her and have those conversations. Um, and here's the other thing too, because a lot of people get defensive when their behavior or response is being criticized, even if it's being criticized constructively. Sometimes it helps to kind of frame the conversation in a way that you're letting her know what you're needing, and open it up by letting her know that you're not um, like that you're not attacking her. So saying something like, mom, like, I understand that you had to go because of XYZ reason. This When I was miscarrying, this was a very difficult time in my life, and I really had wished you were there. And I'm I just, I'm really hurt that you weren't able to be there. And um and then you could also say, I know that might not be easy for you to hear, and we don't have to discuss it. I don't want to argue about it. I just wanted you to know how I was feeling, and um, that I'm hoping, um, I don't know, that in the future that we could talk about things, or kind of whatever you're kind of needing from her. It'd be great if I just need a hug, or this is kind of what I'm looking for from you. I don't know your mom, so that's going to be up to you as to how open she would be to receiving something like that. If you think all you're going to get is criticism and defensiveness and all of that, then that's probably not going to go very far. So maintaining some sort of contact with her, assuming that that conversation can't be had, then it's going to involve just kind of readjusting your expectations to meet reality. So if she has that long-standing pattern of kind of cold, calloused, or cruel indifference as to how her behavior impacts you, and she's not open to any feedback or any conversation about it, then just kind of realizing this is who she is, and it doesn't mean that it's right or that it's okay or any of that, but it's accepting reality for what it is, so you can adjust to reality accordingly, instead of trying to adjust reality to this kind of fantasy that we have about the mom that we hoped we had, or that we hope someday down the road we will have. Being in reality when it comes to that, and just realizing, okay, these are her limitations. She can't be there for you in the ways that you're needing her to be there. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, it sucks, but it is what it is. And kind of working through your own feelings of hurt and anger and betrayal and sadness and all of that around that. And when you interact with your mom, um, if you're able to readjust your expectations of her, then that'll also readjust your mm, the ability or inability for her behavior to hurt you. Because when you see somebody's behavior clearly, you're not caught off guard by it. And so it doesn't, because of that, you're not hurt as much because you're kind of half expecting it. So if you have a parent who's just continually let you down, anticipate that they're going to continually let you down in the future, instead of holding on to the fantasy that somehow magically this next time is going to be different when there's no reason to think it's going to be different. So realizing, okay, yeah, you know what? This person, I don't know, dad always shows up drunk, or Uncle Larry always uh, shows up late, or mom is never, she's not a good in emotional support. And so when we can see other people's behavior clearly, we can adjust our expectations accordingly. So that way we know, okay, you know what? Uncle Larry tends to roll in a good hour late. So let's set things up to where we're not waiting on him. Like he can meet us at a restaurant, so we're not all waiting to eat and then really hungry by the time he shows up. These kinds of things. Or if dad always shows up drunk, um, maybe not having liquor at the house if you're inviting him over for Thanksgiving, or um, um, maybe not having kids around, or maybe not inviting him. Maybe having that conversation of, it's really important that you stay sober for this. Or again, like maybe not inviting him to certain events where you need him to be sober, where he's probably not going to be. Or if he does show up drunk, realizing, okay, his behavior is going to be unpredictable because he's been drinking. So, you know, um, these kinds of things. If mom's not able to be there for you, then to be like, okay, you know what, mom, these are her limitations. And so maybe if you're needing emotional support, she's not the person that you go to. So maybe she might be the person that you go to when it comes to asking questions about recipes, or um, I don't know, you guys go do certain things together. You go see, she's might be the person that you go watch a movie with where there's not a lot of interaction, or you have some sort of shared hobby, or so maybe she's the person that you only talk to like once a week, or once every other week, once a month, or even less than that. You'll know based on like the level of kind of peace you have with that. Jennifer asks, what are your thoughts on dreams? I've always had very vivid dreams my whole life, but lately they've seemed much more symbolic. Yeah, I think dreams are very telling. There's, I'm sure you've come across these. There's lots of different um, interpretation, dream interpretation information on the internet. And there's a whole kind of psychoanalysis behind dream interpretation that that can be very telling. So, uh, yeah, I think it can be interesting to write down some of the elements that you remember, and then looking them up. The thing with the subconscious that it's important, I guess, to realize with when it comes to dreaming or even nightmares, is the subconscious doesn't judge. It's neutral. So we might have a dream about, I don't know, something that sounds horrific, like a dead body, or snakes or something that's scary or unsettling or um, whatnot. And the dream itself might seem unsettling, but then the image that our subconscious is picking might not have that negative connotation to it. Like, the death, seeing a dead body in a dream might represent, I don't know, change, or it might represent um, kind of moving on, or it could potentially represent something positive, even though it's terrifying in our dream. Um, so yeah, it can be interesting to look up and see those dream journals and think about, okay, yeah, uh, does that fit? Does that seem accurate? And if so, like what's going on? And especially if it's a reoccurring dream. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Ren says, yeah, the setting boundaries is the most loving thing that you can do. Yeah, it really is. There's such boundaries get such a bad rap of that's mean, or that we have to kind of be aggressive with it, and it's not. If we're and this is where it goes back to learning effective communication, because there's different styles of communication, right? You have passive aggressive, you have aggressive, and then you have assertive. And so it takes practice, time and practice, learning how to be assertive. I think a lot of people, myself included, it, it takes a while to kind of get your sea legs with it. So for people that have been on the more passive side of the spectrum, for example, if kind of they continually go with the flow. I've been very go with the flow. I've been very, easy to be around. And this can seem like a great thing. I kind of just don't have any real strong opinions. It's just whatever you want to do kind of thing. That's passive. And so passive, people that are continually passive tend to get their boundaries are pushed and pushed and pushed. They might not even realize it, but they're getting pushed and pushed and pushed until they finally, one day, they just explode. And so then they go from passive to aggressive. And if we don't have a very solid footing in what being assertive looks like, it's easy to confuse being aggressive with being assertive. Because sometimes we might aggressively be assertive. We might aggressively be asserting our boundaries. That's not okay with me. And I told you, and this, da, 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 da. And we're letting the other person know how we feel, but we're saying it. Our body language or our verbal language is coming across in a very attacking, very intimidating way. And that's not okay. So, back to what UNA was saying early on in this live stream, the value of practicing this skill in the mirror, or practicing with a therapist or even a trusted friend, is powerful stuff, because it can be very difficult, especially if we have a lot of emotions. If we feel hurt, we feel betrayed, we feel angry, we feel strongly about something, or if a boundary's been pushed for a long time, uh, if we're trying to assert ourselves, we can kind of come out of the gate hot, and these situations can spiral very quickly. So, um, yeah. When we're able to be assertive, and think about the people that you know in your life, if you know any, that are pretty good with being assertive. Odds are you feel pretty comfortable. There's that level of emotional safety in that relationship, because that they'll say something. And there's a lot of comfort in that. Of There's no wondering if one day they're just going to up and leave, or if uh, they're going to say, oh, everything's fine, everything's fine, and then blow up on you, kind of thing. That if there's an issue, no matter how small, that they're gonna bring it up with you and that it'll get resolved. And again, it's a totally different way of learning to communicate. Again, this stuff's not taught. It's not really role modeled. And it can feel very awkward at first. It can feel rude. Other people can perceive it as rude. It can feel, uh, other people can feel attacked when we're kind of continually asserting our boundaries. If this isn't okay, or I had an issue with this, or I just don't appreciate kind of that comment, or hey, that's not okay with me. uh, they can feel like, oh, nothing I ever do is right, kind of a thing. So it's challenging, and it changes the dynamic of a relationship. It's it's challenging, but it's worth it in the end. And uh, your relationships will be stronger because of boundaries, not for your lack of them. Yeah, that's a good analogy. Refiner says, Dana, being assertive is like skillfully maneuvering a truck through traffic and getting the four wheelers to move for you. It's yes, yes. But, thankfully with time and practice, it becomes so much easier. And there's still going to be moments where you handle things in ways that you're like, "Ah, I really could have handled that better," or that you're shocked, like, I cannot believe I handled that the way that I did. Yikes. Or uh, that you're just at a loss for words. And then you end up having to come back a day or two later and saying, hey, you remember what happened the other day? Like, I think we need to kind of talk about that. It's a I don't know if there's ever a finish line with any of this stuff in life, and that's okay, because we're all learning and growing. We're all figuring it out. The good news is you don't have to achieve mastery of these skills in order for your life to radically change, or to start working for you. Sometimes you only need like a 5 or a 10 degree shift in how you're doing things. And then over the course of time, that 5 or 10 degrees, those few handful of changes make an ocean of difference. Oh, Jack says, well, Dana, Refiner is a truck driver, CDL and everything. That's funny. Yeah, well, there you go. Kayla says, yeah, if somebody treats your boundaries like a burden, run. Yeah. And Miss Lee says, I guess the finish line is when we learn how to deal with certain people. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a pretty good start. I forget who, somebody made the comment a while back of the moment that we fully are able to become an adult is the moment that we're able to be assertive with our parents. And I love that. I think that's so spot on, because that is the hardest dynamic for anybody to be assertive, is with parents. Because it's when because before, as children, you're on the receiving end of it. There is no uh, um, kind of mutual relationship there. It's parent and child. It's um, Although that's changing. I think that was more of a generational thing. That's changing a lot. But back in my day, uh, it was you had children listen to their parents. It was very one-sided. There wasn't a lot of interest in what kids wanted or needed. It was kind of everything just trickled down. It was kind of a one way street, and that's changing, thankfully. So kids, the emotions and thoughts and feelings and all of that, it's being seen, it's being heard, it's being valued, it's being appreciated, it's being validated. So times they are changing, but um, uh, yeah, it used to be very much kind of that one-sided thing. And so the challenge with that is kids, you grow up used to not having a voice and not being seen as kind of a whole person, that you were just always the child. Uh, and even as an adult, you were still kind of seen as the child, and that there's this level of submission that was expected to a parent. And uh, but the reality is when we shift into becoming adults, our relationship with our parents shifts. It has to, because we have, as you step into adulthood, you have adult responsibilities. If you have, even if you don't go on and get married or have your own children, even if you stay single, you still have your own adult responsibilities. You have your uh, time, your energy, your emotions, your money, um, your job, your own stuff. And so that dynamic with the parent, it needs to change to more of one of kind of in many ways equality and mutuality, instead of, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing what my parents want me to do because that's what I should do because they're my parent. Sort of like, well, no, I got my own stuff going on, and I have to I have to create a new balance there. And in order to create that new balance, there has to be assertiveness present. So, okay. Jennifer asks, she says, I could totally see Angie as ENFJ. She says, I wonder what Dana is. I would have to go back and look. Um, Mine was, I'll let you know. I'll have to go look in my email. I ended up taking that personality test. I want to say it was INFJ, maybe. I'll let you know tomorrow. Book club is tomorrow. Just as a reminder. That's a nice segue there, huh? Book club is tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys would like to join, we'll be discussing the book, The Four Agreements. And yeah, so, and I'll make it a point to look up in my email what my personality style was. I mean, write it down. Hold on. Okay. So, with that said, because we've got book club tomorrow, I think I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early tonight. So I still have a voice for tomorrow. So with that said, we'll still do our guided uh, meditation thing tonight. So let's just go ahead and move into that, and then we'll end about 30 minutes or so early, because I can feel my voice, mm, yeah, struggling. Okay. So let's take some time to find a comfortable spot, whether that's sitting in a chair, lying down. Allowing yourself to just decompress and be fully in this moment. And taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now turning your attention to the different sounds around you. Noticing what you hear. Perhaps it's the hum of your computer or of a fan. Perhaps it's the sound of neighbors moving around, cars going by, clocks ticking. Noticing all of the sounds around you. And now taking some time to notice how the environment around you feels. And how is the air temperature? Is it cool? Is it warm? Is it just right? And how does the fabric against your skin feel? Is it soft? Is it scratchy? Is it lightweight? Is it heavy? And how does it feel when you take each breath, allowing yourself to sink into the chair or the bed or wherever you are? Noticing your body feeling heavier. And continuing to breathe. And allowing your muscles to just unwind and decompress. Allowing your arms and your legs to feel heavy. And thanking your muscles for all of the hard work that they do every single moment of every single day. And letting them know that it's okay for them to take a break right now. It's okay for them to just relax and for your body to relax. And taking a moment to scan your body slowly, noticing any areas that still feel tense. And sending each breath to those areas, allowing those muscles to unwind and loosen up. Feeling your body become heavier and heavier. And as you continue to breathe, allowing your chest to easily and effortlessly rise and fall. Sending each breath down deep into the bases of your lungs, down into your stomach, down into your hips, into your knees and your calves and your feet, so that with each breath you're feeling your whole body rise and fall easily and effortlessly. Feeling grounded and safe in this moment. And taking some time to acknowledge all of the many things that are good and right about you. And there are so many, so many. That you're interested in personal growth, that you're creative, that you're capable, that you're intelligent, and that you're determined. You're determined to make your life work, that you're open. You're open to learning new skills, that you're self reflective and introspective. You're curious. You want to know kind of what makes you tick and why do you do the things that you do and why do other people do the things that they do? And that you're interested in some of the deeper things about life. And that you're curious about this whole journey. And that you're brave for stepping out of your comfort zone and for practicing different skills. You're brave for reaching out and asking questions here in the chat. That takes a ton of courage. You know, you're insightful. You're tuning in to what works for you. That level of self knowledge, self actualization, self awareness of what is nourishing for you and what is draining for you. And that you're becoming so much more in tune with that. And you're making that shift to where other hurtful things that people have said, either currently or maybe even decades in your past, that you're making that shift to realize, oh my gosh, that was never about me. That was about them. And that you don't have to own that and you don't have to carry that anymore. And that other people can have their opinions, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the truth. And you're learning that you're getting in tune with the fact that there are so many things that are good and right and lovable with you. And that doing all of these things, these are all acts of self love. So if you're struggling with loving yourself, realize that being interested in personal growth, being interested in making your life work, that in itself are some awesome acts of self love. So you're already on the path. So, yay, you for that. So, let's take some time, visualize just giving yourself a really big, energetic hug, acknowledging just how far you've come. Telling yourself that you're proud of yourself and that you're doing a great job, because it's true, you really are. And that there is so much that is good and right about you. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. Mm. So, thank you guys so much for being here. And I hope that you have a peaceful evening. And I hope to see you tomorrow for book club. We'll be here at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let's see, what else was I going to tell you? Oh, if you're interested in receiving a notification of when I go live, you can text um, the words Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999 and receive notifications. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for supporting each other. Mod Squad, you guys are awesome as always. Thank you so much for all your help. Um, yeah, take care, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay, good night. Oh, I almost I forgot. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. Yes, it is important that you know that, and that you live that, and that you always remember that. So, okay, take care. Good night.